G'day everyone, back from my overseas, well not overseas, usually I'm overseas, back from my trip up to Queensland, up the north of Australia. Got back late last night, so I thought I'd pop in and say hi to everyone. Just having a bit of a, we'll probably have 5 minutes or so of pre-show. I always forget to turn that off. 5 minutes or so of pre-show and then we'll get started. Thought I'd talk to you too about what gear I took away this time. I was going to try something different, but I'll talk about that once we get onto the full show. So I'm just going over to the chat. So say hi if you are here. Now, if you're actually logging in later and you don't want to see this pre-show, because we'll give it a few minutes because it wasn't scheduled basically, just skip until you see the Osler Images logo. Now, there'll also be a timeline down below as well, so you can skip to that if you like. If you don't want to follow this earlier chat that we all have getting started. So how many? We've got 30 odd watching now, so if you can, guys, please give me a thumbs up. It just gets other people involved and they'll all move over. G'day, Gerald. How are you? Good to see you on here. Jason's also here. Rui as well. Who else have we got? CG's here. Don't forget too, if you want my attention, put at David Osler, particularly for the chat later on. Mike's here as well saying hi. Barry's here as well. Jason, Invent is saying hi. Casper's saying hello. Chris, hello David. A good Corona day in Los Angeles. Hope you had a great vacation. Yeah, it was great. It was really good. I'm having a Coke. I've had a few drinks over the last 5 days, guys. I'm sort of detoxing myself today. We had a great time. Just Kerry and myself decided to go away just for 5 days. So it was only a really quick trip. And we went up north. As you all know, it's winter down here in Melbourne. I mean, today is actually quite cold. It's actually 13 degrees Celsius. It's a cold one today. Where I went up to in Surfers Paradise is more like, I suppose, if you're from the US, it's more like, I suppose, LA or Florida in the weather. Their winter temperatures are around about 20, sort of mid-20s. So we went up there for a bit of a sunbreak. We're only a couple of weeks away from spring here. I noticed the flowers are already starting to bloom, so hopefully we might have an early spring. I have got a number of spring shots come out, and I'm very lucky that I live in an area where it's actually very famous for its apple growing. And I love spring because I can get amongst all those blossoms and take a few models out and do some shoots. So I'll have that in the coming weeks as well. Really looking forward to it. I love spring here in Melbourne. It's beautiful, particularly where I live because there are so many blossom trees. It's gorgeous. So I'll be doing quite a bit of that. But I have noticed they're starting to flower. So hopefully within a couple of weeks it's going to start warming up. I can't wait for that too. So let me just go back to some of these questions just to see. We're going to talk about that MBW, the rumours for the a6700. So we're going to talk about that together, actually as the first story, I think. So we will be going through that as well. Rui said, you seem like you're rested and ready to go. Yeah, I had a great time. We basically just drove around to a few lovely locations, saw dolphins swimming and those birds, which were a classic. That was standing on my head. If you check out one of the videos I posted from the holiday, it was great. You go up to this little mountain retreat up the top, and the birds are all free to fly, but they come in and sit all over your head and do all these things. The beautiful coloured birds. We're stunning. We have such stunning birds here in Australia. Rui said, you seem like... Yeah, I read that one. Jim said, hi, David. Not cracking a stubby today. No, I'm detoxing myself, Jim, from the holiday I've just had. I had a few stubbies over the holiday, let me just say that. A few stubbies, a few wines, and a few champagnes as well. So I'm not having a stubby with you guys today, but I'll have a stubby with you guys next week. So I'm having Coke Zero today, just detoxing myself. So if you guys in the US and Europe particularly, where it is still lovely and hot, cheers and crack a stubby for me, will you? So we've got some really interesting rumours to share with you today. I can't wait to go through that. Stratus said, oh, we are alive, buddy. Yep, I thought I'd pop in today. Normally I do the Friday Melbourne time, which is Thursday US time, but because I only got back late last night, I thought I'd pop in today and give you one today, just so I haven't missed it all. Jason said in here, let me just see, I'll just get rid of this pre-show. Jason said, have you had any experience with getting images published in magazines? I have a model that really wants her images published. Mostly for weddings, Jason, but I've never had to ask them to be done. They nearly always just get put in. A lot of the venues have shared. I've got about, I'll just grab the magazines. I've been published in a number of them. I mean, there's some here too that I just grabbed photocopies of, that this was for a venue that I did, that they're using. I'll just go full screen. They were using my work here as this background image. I photocopied that. You can see there, that's one of their brochures that they actually published. My work's inside this as well. I'm in Living, what's this one? Living Bliss. I've been published in here. This is all my work that actually is put through here. I'm in this wedding styling video book that I'm just trying to see where. That's another one of my weddings that I actually did through here, which was a beautiful wedding that I did in a gorgeous vineyard. Shutter Magazine was an interesting one, the Wedding Shutter Magazine. I actually have an image that was put in here. That's my image that was actually printed inside here. I don't know whether you can see that. The bride and groom are tiny. They're actually just here. So that I was wrapped in that one. That was stunning. So that's, yeah, the Shutter Magazine Wedding yearly book. There's a stack over there too. This is Bride and Groom Magazine. I've got that was one of my images too that was actually shared there on the top, and some images over here that were shared from that venue as well. So I've been very lucky, like I haven't had to ever pay for publishing or anything like that. They've usually found me from shooting, and because I share the venues, usually have approached and asked me if they could use them in those magazines. And it's interesting because a lot of the magazines often ring me up and say, do I want to pay to be featured? But I've never had to, because I'm constantly featured anyway from the venues that I shoot at, so I sort of don't have to. So I've been very lucky, I suppose, in that I have had my work constantly shared in magazines all through the year, and they continually get done. I've got a number as well. I think they're in the house actually. Another whole stack of magazines in there as well. And my work is also shared on websites. They'll ask me if they can do them, and as long as I say yes, as long as you say that they're my work. I've got a number of vineyards particularly that do weddings that share my work, quite a few of them actually. But yeah, I mean, I'm quite proud that I can get that without paying for it. If you did want to pay for it, obviously you would have to contact the magazines, and then you can submit them, and that's one way that you can actually get put into magazines. And that's the only way you can do it, is to try and get a stylized shoot, send that off to a magazine, and hopefully they'll get back to you, unless you want to pay for it, but that would be quite expensive. The only way you can ever get published otherwise is just to submit them to magazines. Try and get a theme going and then send them off to a magazine. We're still on pre-show as well, guys, so we will start in a minute. I'm just seeing if there's many more things before we start. Jason has also said, I'm sure the obvious answer is just to take amazing shots. Yeah, but you've also got to be lucky too that you might get something that they like, you know, that theme that you're actually shooting with. They often like theme work where you're showing a whole stack of images throughout the day, particularly with my wedding images that I've had published. You have to sort of share a whole range of the day, and then they'll sort of put that together in the magazine as well. But yeah, I've been very lucky that I have had that. Thomas said, so in Australia it's called AAA, Aussie Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what I'm struggling at the moment. I have had a few beverages up on my holidays, guys. That's why I'm drinking the Coke Zero today. Oh, I love it. What else have we got? Fathom Rocker said it's about 38 degrees here and about 85 humidity. Horrible, yeah. It's quite cool here today, actually. I think it's still 13 degrees, but it'd be 0 humidity. Jason said, very nice. You must be very proud of those. Yes, I am. Thank you, Jason. Stratus said, hey, great mate, cheers from sunny Sydney, mate. I'm shaking the nerves of working with a model. Okay, any advice for a newbie on how to start a session? Well, look, you can go through a stack of my video, Stratus, because you'll see how I approach all the model shoots that I do. That's probably one of the best things that you can do. But remember, you may be nervous, but I can guarantee that the model won't know that. So the thing to do is to slow down, work slowly, and as long as you look confident, the model will gain that confidence as well. So I wouldn't, honestly, I'd just try and be confident. But watch a few of my videos because I've got stacks on there that you'll be able to follow. I've got hundreds actually on here. Jason said, thanks for the information. What's that? Flying high or low said, oh, okay, say T group. Now, if you've got models, if you're saying that you're there working with models, have you already got the model, Stratus? If you've already got the model, obviously they must have liked your work anyway to be working with them. I know here in Melbourne you get a lot of the TFP sites like Melbourne Models, all these other areas where you can actually post work or give a theme of what you'd like to do, and you can grab hair, makeup artists and things like that as well. That can help you as well. But like I said, the main thing if you're a newbie working on a session is you can get posing books. You can also get posing apps on your iPhone as well that you can use too. Or even if you like inspiration from a magazine, take a photo of it and then just show the model if you're not very confident. Show the model that you'd like to replicate this pose, and they'll be fine with doing that. And, you know, work that way. And when you say, if you watch some of my videos, you'll see that I start from one pose and then I'll move around or just move the arms a little bit. Don't be too conscious of moving them all the time, like to a different pose. Have them in the same static pose, and then they can be just doing one pose with their hands. They can bring up their hands to their face. You know, they can bring up their hands over their head. You can do multiple poses from the one sort of shot. And even if you change your location too, like moving sideways, move back, move in, you can get multiple shots as well. But remember, they won't know what you're looking at on your camera. So as long as you show confidence, you'll give them confidence as well. All right, guys, so we're going to start the show. I'm going to bring up the Osler Images sign and then we'll get started. So just hang on just for a second. G'day, everyone. Back from my holidays. We just had a bit of a pre-show. I'm going to take you through a number of things today, a number of rumours, but I thought I'd talk to you first about what gear I used during my holidays, because I tried something really different this year. By the way, I'm drinking Coke because I'm de-alcoholing myself, or whatever you'd like to say, detoxing myself after the holidays I've just had. So I'm just on Coke Zero today. So cheers, everyone. No, I'll crack a stubby with you on Friday's show. Now, this holiday when I went away, I thought I'd try something completely different. Normally, I've always taken my high-end gear, and I did still take my high-end gear because I wanted to do a video of me shooting it. I thought what I'd try, and this was the interesting thing, I thought because it's like just a 5-day trip, I was going to somewhere where I've been before, that I'd try and use this camera solely for my photography, and that included time-lapse, video, apart from the video of me holding it where I used the a7 III. I thought I wanted to try it just to see how good a result I could get from this camera. And looking at the early results, I'm actually really quite pleased with it. Look, it's not full frame in the look of it, but just wait till you see the review and I'd love to know your opinion about it. But I thought for just a trip like that, where it was basically somewhere I've been before, I mean, I wouldn't do that at, say, for instance, if I was traveling to Venice or something like that, I'd take this and I'd also take my full frame gear. But as a quick tour where I've been before, where there was sort of no pressure that I had to get images that I'd never seen before, I thought that I'd try using this completely, and I really enjoyed it. It was so much fun carrying just a small little camera like this, putting it in my pocket, shooting video, shooting stills, doing time-lapse and everything. So I've captured a whole stack of stuff that I'll show you in a coming review, because I'm going to put that together in a review for you all so you can see how it sort of goes. And I'll probably label it, is the RX100 good enough for travel? And I'll have that video up sometime this week. So stay tuned for that. It was really sort of liberating to be able to carry such a small little camera and just stick it in my pocket. But really enjoyed it. Anyway, so stay tuned for that. It'll be coming up in a coming video. Another shoot that I've got tomorrow is I'm doing a studio shoot similar to what I did with Kiara. I'm not sure if you remember seeing it, where it was a white sort of high key look with coloured shadows. Well, I've got a whole stack of models coming in tomorrow, and I'm going to do that with them, and I'll film that for you and show you that, how it was shot and how I went about the lighting. Now, even though I'll be using ProPhoto lights, you could do exactly the same thing with Godox, so that system will be the same, and I'll be sort of saying that to you when you watch the video later on, that the lights really don't matter. It's the process that matters, and as long as you go about it the same way I'm going about it, it will work for you too. So I've got a really exciting shoot that I'll be filming tomorrow for you all, so stay tuned for that. Obviously, now that I'm back from holidays, I'll have a few videos up during the week as well. But we're going to start off with news. Now, we're going to do questions. Now, if you want questions, just make sure you answer the @ or put the @ David Osler. That way, at least I see it when we go back through questions later on, and I won't miss it. Because sometimes, like Ben, if Ben's asked a question there, I may miss it if you don't put the @ David Osler. Just make sure that it grabs my attention later on. So yeah, so there you go. So let's start with news anyway. And we're going to go through the a6700 because I noticed this came up. Now, it's only an SR2, so I'm not sure how accurate this is at this stage. And I think some of these may have just basically been pulled out of a hat, these specs. But I thought we'd go through it. Just let me enlarge this a little bit, actually, because I want to make it a bit bigger. Where are we? Here. That one. And there we go. So it's only an SR2 at the moment. And obviously this is just a graphic that they've put together to show what it's like. But I thought I'd go through some of the things that they're saying, the specs, the rumoured specs that this is, and see whether you think, especially in the chat, whether you think it's a possibility. But the new sensors, but now, by the way, they're still saying, for all the rumours that I've seen, saying that it's going to be announced or released sometime later this year. We still believe that the A7S III is going to be the next camera that's going to be coming out, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on with the Nikon and Canon Mirrorless. So I still think that's probably going to be the next camera. But Sony is liable to drop this at any time. And, you know, really they could drop this from now or next week or whatever. But I think it probably will come later this year. But let's go through the specs anyway of this camera. So they're saying in here that it's going to have a new sensor with better low light. And they're saying that it's still going to have 24 megapixel sensor and huge improvements in IBIS. Now, that's a real plus. If they could get something like the GH5 IBIS in an a6700, I would be unbelievably happy if they could do that. Being able to hold the camera still, I can do it with the a7 III and also with the a6500, and I even did it, wait for the results from this, the RX100. I even do it with this too. The steady shot on this on 1080p is not too bad. 4K, it's not very good. But 1080p, it's fairly good. And I've taken some test shots, so I'll show you how that is in the review that I've done. But if we could get, say, the stabilization of a GH5 particularly inside that body would be unbelievable, because to work fast and be able to hold it still like you can, I honestly could hold a GH5 like it was on a tripod. I really didn't need to use tripods much at all, especially in the tripod mode that has. It's outstanding. So if we could get something similar to that with the a6700, I would be so happy. And I think they probably would improve IBIS anyway over the a6500. So let's hope that they do improve it that much. Slight improvements in IAF or AF anyway. New better AA filter, I should say. New Sony color science, well, that would be a given now that every camera that's released has had better Sony color science. So hopefully they'll also improve that for that as well. Fully articulating screen. Now this would be the game changer, I think, for that camera. If they give us a fully articulating screen, that camera would sell like hotcakes to the vlogging world. That's the reason why I mostly bought this, and I did use it when we were on holidays to point it back towards me. To have that ability, you know, to basically face yourself when you're doing shots and do that is just incredible. And not having that on an a6700 camera has really been, well, it is a downfall if you're dealing with vlogging. And I think they have to give you a reason to make you buy the a6700 over, say, an a7 III. And that could be one of the things that they entice us with, is to have this fold-out, fully articulating screen. Therefore, it might still be the only camera that has that articulating screen, the full one. The a7S III probably won't have it. It'll probably have the similar screen to like what we've got now. I'm not expecting a fully articulating screen on the a7S III. But if they could give us that on a a6700 or 700, it would sell like hotcakes. I mean, I would buy that instantly if they gave us that, just for the vlogging side alone. So if they could give us better IBIS and the fold-out screen, and if they could potentially give us 4K 60p, which they're sort of saying here. They're saying 4K 60 frames per second with crop. Now, yes, it probably will have a crop. That won't bother me too much. I can just put something like the 10 to 18 on there. And then even with a crop, I'm still going to have ample room to use that lens for vlogging and things like that. But I would be happy even if they gave us that with a 5-minute time limit on it. It still would be an amazing camera and an amazing vlogging camera. So I'm hoping that is included as well. They're saying big improvements in rolling shutter. That seems to be each new generation as well. We're getting that. A UHS 2 card, and they probably will need that too if they're dealing with shooting faster or potentially shooting the 4K 60 frames per second. And they're saying faster, startup, less lag. It will be faster overall, better UI and touchscreen. I really think Sony are holding back on that touchscreen at the moment. If you look at what they do with mobile phones, there's no reason why they shouldn't be giving us that in their cameras. So come on, Sony, if you listen to this, please fix your touchscreens. Uncompressed RAW. 20 frames per second, yes, 20. 1/8000th shutter, at the moment it's 1/6000th shutter, or is it 1/4? No, it might be 1/4000th. Viewfinder size got smaller, resolution is the same, and USB 3.1. But they are saying down here that no dual cards. And I wouldn't expect them to be putting dual cards in a camera body that's that size. I just don't think it's going to fit. So I don't think they can give us dual cards in the current body. And I don't think they're going to want to go much bigger in what the camera size is now, because I think that's its selling point, is that it is so minimalistic in its size. So I don't think we're going to get dual cards. And it looks like they probably won't give us the Z battery either, because again, they would have to make the camera that much bigger. No joystick. No removal of the AA filter, and no 10-bit video, and the same price there at $13.99 US. So let me know what you guys think about that, and I will come back to the chat to talk about this a little bit later as well. Let me know whether you think, is that something, if they did do that, that you would be interested in? Or are you all just thinking, I don't really care about the a6700 anymore, I'd just like to go to an a7S III? Or do you think the a7 III is good enough? I'd love to know your opinion about that in the live discussion when we come back to questions, because it's really interesting. I do believe they're going to have to give us something that is different to, say, the a7 III. And remember, because if the prices are close, you would just move up to the full frame. So they have to give us that thing where, like, a vlogger would want to buy this for that flip-out screen, things like that, its size, that sort of stuff. 4K 60p, again, the a7 III hasn't got that. And I think the a7S III is obviously going to be quite a bit more expensive. It's going to be probably up there around about the a7R III, or maybe even a little bit dearer. So I think the two that are going to be competing against each other is the a7 III and the a6700. So they've got to make you sort of not want to just jump up to the a7 III. The other thing too that we've got to wait on is to see what Canon release and also Nikon release in their full frame mirrorless as well, because that may also have something that affects what the a6700 has and also what the a7 III has. And I think that's why Sony are waiting with the a7S III to see what those announcements are, and then we'll probably get an announcement from Sony. Now, like I've said to you before, Sony can probably still change things in those cameras in software. There is amazing things that can be done in software if they want to unlock it. Like I said, if you look at what Fuji have added recently in their cameras, what the GH5 have been able to add with better IBIS, with better focus and things like this. Even I think with different video formats and things like that. So I'm sure Sony could also probably give us things like that as well. And they may be waiting to see what Sony and Canon do, and then they can still tweak their cameras. And I bet you that they could probably tweak those a lot more than you think through firmware. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I do think Sony are waiting now at this stage to see what happens, which will be around that Photokina, probably around that time. And so that's the first story. And again, I'm going to come back to chat at the end, guys. So let's go to the second story. And I just wanted to bring this one up because Tamron, I just noticed that they're saying they're going to do a 17 to 35 millimeter 2.8 full frame lens for Canon and Nikon. And I'm hoping that they bring this out also for Sony. And I think they probably will. Now that they've got the 28 to 75 millimeter, this will be a perfect fit to run with that. So if you're after the perfect combination of light and it covers a really wide focal range, this would be a great combo working with that. And I think we're probably going to see that in the future as well, somewhere down the line. Now that Tamron have seen how much they can sell with their lenses, I'm sure that they're going to start supporting Sony more and more because clearly they still can't catch up with the 28 to 75. So those things are obviously selling like hotcakes, particularly now that the focusing problems have been sorted out. And what do you guys think? Do you think this will be an interesting lens that you'd like to look at? Now, I think it was a variable aperture though. No, it is only 2.8, I think. It doesn't say... Oh, no, it is. It's a 2.8 to f4. Again, the f4 is not really a problem because it's just like using a 16 to 35 mm f4 that I've got now. But the beauty is at the 17 millimeter end, you're shooting at 2.8. So if you want to use this wide open at 17 millimeter, you've got 2.8 rather than my 16 to 35. I've got to be shooting at f4. So it could be a great combo. So the worst case is you're going to be using f4, which is no different than what I'm shooting now with my 16 to 35 Sony lens. So let me know whether that really interests anyone. But I would be surprised if that is not announced sooner or later for Sony as well. Clearly, they seem to be, I suppose, supporting Canon and Nikon to start with, but I would be very surprised, like I said, now with Sigma on board, how fast their other lenses selling for Sony. I'm sure we'll see a native lens with that as well. So that's the second story. Third story is they're saying that Sigma, they're actually saying they may not give us a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. They're not sure whether they'll give us that because according to this article down here, it's actually saying that Sigma will announce new lenses on September, possibly a 70 to 200, but they don't know if it's possible to make for Sony E-mount. Now, that's interesting. Now, I think the problem there, and someone else may be able to talk about this in the chat, but I think the problem is that Tamron are basically being treated like a native lens. Now, I'm not sure if Sigma have that same working relationship with Sony, and that could be the problem here of why they're saying they can't produce zoom lens, because clearly you can produce zoom lenses because Tamron have done it with their 28 to 75. So whether that Tamron are being given basically the ability to do that and Sony are allowing them to do that, or whether Sigma haven't got that working relationship with Sony, that could be the reason why they're saying that it may not work. Now, someone else may be able to give an answer in the live chat, so we'll go through that a little bit later on in case if anyone knows. I would love that if Tamron could give us, say, that 17 to 35, you've also got the 28 to 75 millimeter. If Tamron would also give us a 70 to 200, how good will that be? Because if they can give us a 2.8 lens that is light like what the 28 to 75 is, what a fantastic combination you're going to get from Tamron. Now, yes, they're not made the same as the G Masters. They're obviously clearly not made the same way, but for most people out there, it's going to be good enough. and I'm hoping that's what Tamron do in the future. It's a bit surprising that Sigma have said that they can't do that, or they're not saying they can't, they're just saying they don't know if it's possible to make Sony E-mount lenses, and that was their exact statement according to Sony Alpha Rumours here that talks about there. And what else? It says on another line here that Sigma officially stated that making E-mount zooms is complicated because of the autofocus algorithm. Let's see if Sigma can tackle this issue in time for the 70-200 2.8 launch at Photokina. That's why I'm saying I think Tamron obviously have a special relationship with Sony. So clearly Sigma are not having that same relationship like what Tamron have, Sigma haven't got that same relationship that Tamron have, and that could be also how you update the firmware. And let me know too in the comments. I'd love to know. See, this is why I know you can update the firmware for the Tamron lens just like a Sony native lens. Anyone that has a Sigma lens, is that possible as well with Sigma, or does it have to be sent back, or how do you update the firmware on Sigma lenses? And I've never thought about that because I never had to do it when I had the Sigma lens with my Nikon. But Tamron, you just update, because the recent update for the 28-75 worked exactly the same way as updating a normal Sony lens. So it'll be interesting to see if Tamron's the only company that Sony allow to do that, or will Sigma also work that same way? Someone in the live chat may let me know. Anyway, I just thought we'd have a discussion about that. Next story. And this is one I just thought I'd share because I wanted to know your opinion about what you thought about this wooden grip for the A9. Does anyone like this? I'm not sure if I like it actually, but it's a very retro looking grip that you can plug in or screw in underneath, and obviously you've got a battery replacement underneath there that you can get to your battery. And it's meant to look really old, I think. But what do you guys think about this? Do you like the look of this grip? I suppose it's going to be very light because it's made of wood. It does look very sort of rustic, but I don't know whether I like it or not. Do you guys like it? Let me know in the live chat whether you think it's something that you'd like to have. Obviously, it's going to give you better control with your pinky if you wanted to run it that way, or if you're using bigger lenses. And it's certainly nowhere near as big as what your Sony grip is. I noticed someone's just said it's hideous. Yeah, I'm not sure if I like it either. I mean, it looks like I could just put it together on a bit of woodworking and put one together myself. But let me know in the live chat anyway whether you like it. I don't think I like it at all. I don't think I'll be putting one on my camera, put it that way. Anyway, I just wanted to sort of show you that. Next story. We've got a couple before we go into questions today. This is the Nikon full frame and Canon full frame. Now, they're still saying that the Nikon full frame camera is going to be announced on August the 23rd, which clearly is not very long off, is it? It's only a couple of weeks away. I'll just have a drink of my Coke. So it's only a couple of weeks away. And this is why I was also saying to you that I think Sony are holding back on announcing their camera because of this. And they're also saying that they think Canon Mirrorless is going to be announced on September the 4th. Now, if Canon are going to announce something on the September the 4th, and they're still saying it's going to be released sometime, I think it was the first quarter of 2019, that's a hell of a long waiting time between an announcement and it actually being released. I did hear a rumour that they're talking about that the Canon may have the EF mount. Now, I'm not sure how that's going to work, or if they're going to just have then just basically a normal size body and just replace the lens and the mirror and everything in there and just put a mirrorless camera in there. So it's an interesting... Now, if they did do that, that could be a really interesting thing for the Canon folk, because you could have, obviously, all your lenses would work as native lenses. So it's going to be interesting to see how both of these two cameras play out. But it looks like we're going to know fairly soon. Clearly, we're going to know the Nikon full specs on August the 23rd, and we're also going to possibly know the Canon on September the 4th. Now, this is why, too, if you are thinking about buying an a6500 or whatever, if you're thinking about switching over or doing whatever you're doing, I'd be waiting until at least the end of September now. You're close enough now to wait and just to see what happens. Because remember, no matter what happens here in the space of Nikon and Canon, you can bet your bottom dollar that Sony are going to answer it. So if you are thinking about buying anything new at the moment, like an a6500, I'd be waiting. Definitely wait, because clearly the a7S III is going to probably combat these announcements. I think they'll probably wait until after the Canon one is announced. I think that's when Sony will probably drop theirs, because remember, Canon are more than likely to have a really good video working camera off the bat than what Nikon probably potentially will with their autofocus, because they can already do amazing autofocus now on the Canon side of things. So I think Canon probably potentially have a much better chance of being able to do a full frame mirrorless for video. The Nikon one probably will be amazing on stills, but no one knows yet how it's going to work with the adapted lenses, how it's going to work in video focus, because at this stage they've never been able to do one that works well with video. Canon probably could do it because they're doing it already now. So let's just wait and see what they do there. But you can bet that Sony will probably answer it with their a7S III. And that's why I think they may be holding that back. And we haven't heard anything. If you notice, there's been very few rumours about the a7S III. I think they're probably waiting to see what Canon do, and then they can answer something. And I think, like I said to you, that they could probably tweak that camera, particularly in firmware, to give you more options. They may give you more frame rates. They might do things like that. You'd be surprised what they can give you in firmware if they want to. Anyway, it's exciting times. We're going to certainly know fairly soon. Like I said, we're probably going to know within 3 weeks' time what's going to happen here. Remember, we have all the big photo shows coming up. I don't know whether it talks about that down here. Yes, it does. Because I think they're saying that the big things coming up are 13th to 18th of September. There's one in Amsterdam, but these are the two big ones. There's the 26th to the 29th of September. We have Photokina, so that's one big one. And there's also the 25th and 27th of October. Now, that's the one, according to Sony Alpha Rumours, that has been the one where Sony have announced most of their big camera announcements, and that's been at Photo Plus. But if Canon and Nikon do drop these two big cameras at Photokina, or before Photokina, I think you might find that we get an answer from Sony in Photokina. Either way, we're going to have really exciting times ahead, which, like I said to you, competition is fantastic, and I really can't wait to see, you know, what happens in that space for all of us, because it's just going to be outstanding. I'm certainly in the market for an a7S III, and I probably would for the a6700 if they gave us some of those features that we spoke about before, which was talking about the articulating screen, the 4K 60p, and better IBIS. So, you know, it's a win-win for everyone. I can't wait. Next story, they're saying here that the Sigma lens will start shipping this month. So if you are waiting on a native version of the 105, now if you are doing tracking tests and all like that, I know Danny was talking about on his show on Monday or Tuesday that the stills shots from this were amazing, the focus. He said it did have trouble when you were dealing with video, the continuous tracking. So you'll probably find that this will work much better than what the adapted lens was when he was using the MC11, because every lens review I've seen talking about the Sigmas, the native versions work better than using the adapted versions. So this one may be the one to get if you are from Sony, if you're on the Sony camp, to wait until you can get that. That's the one I'm hoping when it comes out I can get a review unit of it, I'm hoping. And I'd love to try that one out, particularly for my stills work. It would be fantastic. But it looks like it is going to be shipping this month, or starting to ship this month, so we haven't got long to wait for that. And that will probably be the one to deal with video and things like that as well. Last story before we go into questions. This was a really interesting story, and it doesn't surprise me. I noticed that they're saying on Google Trends, the new Sony a7 III had triple the impact of the a7R 3. Now, that doesn't surprise me at all, and there's all graphs. I'll put all these documents below anyway so you can read them, but it doesn't surprise me at all when you're dealing with this, because if you're dealing with the price of that camera compared to the A7R3 is a hell of a saving if you're dealing with going to full frame. The other thing too is that this camera also is better if you're dealing with video. It is better. It's also better if you're dealing with autofocus, things like that. So the average photographer is probably going to buy this over an A7R3. I'm not saying the A7R3 is an amazing camera. It is. But unless you're shooting landscapes, unless you're shooting portraits in studio where you need that ultimate resolution, I would definitely say that the A7 III is the better camera for the majority of users out there, particularly for wedding and events, where I think the 24 megapixel is the perfect file size. It certainly is for me. Now, it may not be for you, but it certainly is for me. And that's why, looking at those figures, and I'm not surprised that the A7 III has triple the impact of the A7R3, because the A7R3 is too much camera for most of the users out there. I particularly don't want to be shooting weddings with my A7R3 or an A7R3. I've got an A7R2 and I very rarely use that for weddings. I might grab it out occasionally to do something that I know, and I can always tell, I'm experienced enough now that I can tell whether I'm going to blow that up to a massive size. That I might pull it out for that and take that shot, but I'm probably only using it for 10% of the wedding, probably not that much. So I'm quite confident, and I can blow massive file sizes up from 24 megapixel anyway. I used to shoot a D3S and that was 12 megapixels, and I used to do big posters from that. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting discussion. So what do you think all about those, guys? So let me know in questions, because we're going to open it up to questions now, and we'll spend a little bit of time going through all of those. So let me bring this back, and let me just clear that questions layer. And let's have just don't forget to, if you want to grab my attention, just make sure you do put the @DavidOsler. And we'll go back to where we started. Most people early on just saying hi. So I can start from down here, I think. J.E.J. Eggers said, a couple of people are saying need the Z battery. Yeah, I'm not sure, Ray, though, whether they'll do the a6700 with that Z battery. Remember, the body's going to have to be way bigger. Let me know, too, in the live chat, guys, do you think that the a6700 definitely needs the Z battery? Yes, I know it would be fantastic, but would you like them to make a bigger body? Well, for me, it's almost then becoming an A7 III. What do you think about that? And I'd be curious as well. I don't think, I don't know. They're going to have to make the body quite a bit bigger if they're going to add that battery in it, though. Because Tinop said it would be a mistake. Sony could use 2 micro cards. I hope they don't, though, Dave. I don't really want them to change cards. I mean, it would be a pain. JJ Eggert said, want to just spring for the A7R3, keep my A6500 as a second body. Yeah, then that'd be perfect. Carl said the A6700 will be a great hybrid camera for a user on a limited budget. And don't forget, I've put videos up, and that's still getting heaps of likes and chat on, where I shot the A6500 or the A6300, I can't remember, and I took that for travel to New Zealand, and that's all I used, and the images were fantastic. Don't underestimate how good APS-C is if you put decent lenses on those cameras. Creative said he loves the A7R3. I don't blame you, it's a beautiful camera. Ray said new colour science would be nice, and we'll definitely get the new colour science, Ray. That's a given. They have improved the colour science on every. They didn't change really any difference between the A6300 and the A6500, but they were 3 months apart. It was basically the same camera. Vegan said, well, I want full frame. Can't go back now. I love my pictures in full frame. A7 III does it for me. And like I said, I still think the A7 III is the best hybrid camera that's out there. It's stunning. Let me just move that over so I can fit myself in a bit better. What else are you saying? I went for video. I'd go, oh, if you were for video, you'd get the A7S III. Since I have the glass already, will it be 8-bit and the A7S III will be 10-bit? I'll be surprised if they give us 10-bit though. I really will. I hope they do, but I don't think we'll get it. You know what? I used to have 10-bit in my GH5 and I never used it. The file sizes were way too big. And I was happy doing what I'm doing on 8-bit. I suppose, look, if you're a full-on videographer, you might appreciate that difference. For me, I just couldn't justify it. I mean, yes, it can make a difference if you've got stepping in skies. But to be honest, and I love saying that word, I would just stick with 8-bit. But that's me. I'm a hybrid shooter. I'm not a full-on videographer. Videographers will say they'd love 10-bit. Sizzleman said, I'd buy the a6700 with them just adding the articulating screen. And you know what, Sizzleman? I agree with you totally. And this is why I don't understand Sony and why they won't do that. They had it with the a5100 or whatever it was. I really don't understand why they don't give us that articulating screen. I've got a feeling the next one may. The a6700, they may want to do that. And that would really push that camera. It would go ballistic. Vloggers would jump on that camera. Matt said, no Z battery, no extra dials, no joystick, and smaller EVF is a deal breaker for me. I was hoping for a flagship APS-C, something to complement a full frame in the bag without two different lenses. Oh, to talk about that too, I forgot before. You know how I was saying about this is what I took on my trip to Queensland when I went on the 5-day trip. I also took the A7 III because I wanted to film me using that, but all I used was this tiny little battery, this camera pack, which is the Bumblebee. Now, it probably looks big there, but it's not. I mean, I just used this, and this is packed full of gear, but, I mean, everything was sort of put inside here. I love the yellow casing. But I could take everything in here, and I took an A7 III, and I had the 55mm. I only took the 55mm and the 35 2.8. I've got all my time-lapse stuff in here in case if I wanted to use time-lapse. I've got microphones and everything. I mean, look, it's tiny. This backpack, I mean, it doesn't look it on there, but this backpack, it's just a Bumblebee, I think. I don't think this backpack's even made anymore. Carter doesn't exist anymore. But, you know, it really is small. And this is the beauty of going mirrorless. Like, it was so fantastic to take all that gear and it fitted in a tiny backpack and everything was there. I had my drone in there as well. I had the Maverick Pro and it all fits in that one backpack and it's under 7 kilos and I could stick it on the plane and I had everything I needed. That would have been 4 times that big if I was carrying around all my Nikon gear, the same amount of gear. So it's just so liberating to be shooting mirrorless and being able to shoot that way. I forgot to mention that before. That's why I wanted to go back to it. JJ Eggers said, creative films of... he's talking to someone else. Jim said, if I was a wildlife photographer, I'll get the a6500, the a6700 with the Tamron 150 to 600, get the extra APS-C focal length. Yeah, and that can be true. But remember, you can just shoot, if you have the A7R, you can also shoot that in APS-C, so you get the same advantage. I would get, if I was a wildlife photographer, I'd be getting the A7R III. That's personally, if you can afford it, Jim. If you can't afford it, then clearly, yes, you could use the a6700 with those lenses to be fantastic. Happy birthday, Panda. I notice you're in here. It's probably birthday, oh no, it still would be. I don't know whether it's after, oh no, it wouldn't be after midnight there. So happy birthday to you, mate, too. Langston said hello from Downey CA. Hi, Langston. MBW said, I would definitely buy the a6700. Hopefully it will have a better Barrett life now. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe an articulating screen. They definitely have to do something that will make people want to buy it. Yes, they do, definitely. Tinup said, we'll get the a6500 over the a6700 if they keep the old battery. Are these confirmed specs? No, they're only rumours and it's only an SR2, so take it with a grain of salt at this stage. So they're not the confirmed specs that I was taking you through at this stage. What else? Vigas said, I want that Tamron. Yeah, it's great. Tamron are making great lenses. I was so happy with that 28 to 75. I'll get that lens eventually. MBW said f4 on the a7 III, even at night, is not super bad now, and it's not. You're right. It has great low light capability, but remember that you can also shoot that wide open at 2.8. So that 17 to 35 is 2.8 at the wide end. So you know that's amazing. Trevor said, similar to Sigma, Tamron has been silently climbing the ranks of premier glass makers. A few years ago, they were firmly 3 to 4th tier. With the 35, 45 and 85, no one thinks that now, and that's so true, and that's a good comment. I think, honestly, we're so lucky now with Sony. They can no longer say that we've got no lenses. Sigma make excellent lenses. Tamron have given us an amazing lens, and no doubt we're going to get others soon. You've got all of the Sony lenses. You've got all of the adapted lenses that you can use. I mean, it's incredible. We really are spoiled now for lens choices, and it's going to get better and better and better. MBW said, a low aperture wide angle zoom would be great, honestly. Nobody needs to release that Sigma, Zeiss or Tamron. Richard's just saying hi. Carl said Sigma is still designing digital SLR lenses, and that's probably maybe a reason why they can't work one out. I'm not sure that. I don't think they have the same relationship that obviously Tamron have, obviously. Trevor said, I'm terrified to see how big a Sigma 70-200 lens would be. And that's also true because they're massive, their lenses. All their lenses are seriously heavy. A 70-200 from them would weigh 5 pounds. That's funny. That's why I think Tamron may be the one to get. If Tamron can give us a 70-200, it would be amazing. What else? JJ Eggers said, creative film's cool. Got to check Inspire, the next generation. Check me out. They're just talking to someone else there. Vegan said, yes, a 70-200 will be a tree trunk. I love it. You can work out holding the camera. What else? Radar said, Sony have ownership in Tamron. Yeah, and you might be right. That's why I've said to you that obviously Tamron have got a very strong working relationship with Sony because they're treated like a native lens even for their updating. And that's one of the beauties of obviously buying a Sony lens. What else? Yeah, Trevor said, yes, update Sigma lenses with a specialised dock. And that's the problem, isn't it? That's probably, this is why I'm saying that this is why Tamron have been able to give us that 28 to 75. This is probably why they'll be able to produce that 17 to 35 and also the 70 to 200 because they can just work with Sony to produce it right off the bat. Yeah, and that's going to be the difference. Trev said that grip is heinous. I love it. Matt said it was junk. Vegan said it's ugly. Carl said the grip looks terrible. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it either myself. Jason said, honestly, I would rather just 3D print a grip than to use that wooden grip. I don't think they said how much it was either. Let me just go back there and see. Does it say how much it was? Oh, it's here. I'm not sure if it says anywhere how much it is. It's probably not cheap either. No, it doesn't say. Let me just see. Hang on, it might be here. Oh, no, you can buy it on Amazon, I think. Yeah, it doesn't say. Don't know. Anyway, so but I wouldn't be buying it anyway. I think it's bloody ugly. What else? Gerald said, I don't like that wood grip. I don't want anything to make my camera more bulky or heavy. No interest. Yes, you need a Sigma dock for updating and calibrating. Yeah, and it's a pain, isn't it? That's a real pain if you've got to go through that process. Jim said, do not like the wooden grip. Yeah, I don't like it. JJ said, don't mind it. It's all personal, isn't it? Trevor Pinnicky said, I could make that grip on my bench in about 10 minutes. And the thing was, it did look like it was made in 10 minutes as well. That's really funny. I love it. That grip needs to be covered with fine Corinthian leather. Yeah, that'd make it look better, wouldn't it? I'll buy the small rig grip. That looks like I can make it myself. What else? You can update the MC11 adapter without the dock. Okay, that's interesting. I'm waiting. Flying High or Low said, I'm waiting for the Canon, full frame Canon. If it's bad, then I will change to Sony. And you know what? Flying, I would be waiting too at this stage, just to see what happens in this whole marketplace. It's exciting time for all of us. Competition is just so good. Richard said, that wooden grip would be nice to shoot brick walls. Behave yourself, Richard. Gerald said, you use a dock to update the Sigma lenses, but directly plug in the MC11 for updates. It has a USB. Oh, okay. Jim said, I would consider a bamboo grip, but probably cost more than the 7200 GM, and the pandas would be pissed. I love it. Now, where did we get up to? You lose your chick sometimes. Sometimes it just jumps. Oh, there we go. Kavina said he just sold his 16 to 35 GM today. What are you buying? Oh, you've got the... what are you buying? Are you going to just get the 28 to 75? Is that why you sold it? Just curious to know. Perhaps you said later on. Ray said the 17 to 35 would interest me. Yeah, I know, it'd be great. If you could get that for $600, you think about that. That probably is $600, and you can also get the 28 to 75 for $800 or whatever it is. What an amazing combo. That's incredible for that price range. He said, Kavina said, I sold the 16 to 35 GM primarily due to costs, switched to Tamron 28 to 75. Yeah, okay, and I don't blame you. I was so happy with that lens, really was, but you'd need a wider prime as well. But for the price of the 16 to 35, you could buy the 28 to 75 and also an amazing wide angle prime and probably still have money left. Mark said the a6700 is nice, but if it has no Z battery, then I'm out, as I want to reduce my kit, and a B camera should carry the same batteries. Yeah, it is a problem, and I must admit, now when I carry the A6300 or 500 or my A7R3, and I've got to carry those different batteries around, it is a pain. But do you want the camera to be larger? And that's what I'm curious to know. Gerald said, I think Sony will wait and see what Nikon and Canon release before their major announcements. And I agree with you. That's why I think we'll be finding out sometime mid-September. That's my guess at this stage. Straight after Canon have announced it on September the 4th, their mirrorless, I think that's when you'll see Sony throw in their announcements. And that could be an A7S III and an A6700 at the same time. They might blow everyone out of the water and do these both at the same time. Wow, how exciting would that be? Reese Washington just said, great job, thank you. Ray T said, I have the A7 III. It wouldn't bother me if they increase the size of the new A6700. The old battery is a pain. Yeah, but I've got a feeling they're not going to do that, guys. And this is my reasoning. I think they're going to offer that A6700 as a vlogging camera. Now, remember, most vloggers do not want big cameras. That's why vloggers love this. If you look at the number of vloggers that carry around cameras like this size, it's because of this file. It's because of the size of the body. Now, I don't think they'll want to make that camera bigger, because if they make it any bigger, you're going to jump to the A7S, the A7 III. This is the way that I'm thinking. You guys might think differently, but I don't think they're going to want to make that body bigger, because they'll be chasing vloggers with that camera. There's got to be a reason why they didn't put the microphone attachment into the new the RX100 and they still haven't added a microphone. That's because they want to make people jump up to the A6500 or the A6700. And I think they'll want to still keep that small for vloggers. Well, let's wait and see. They may just perhaps increase the battery grip just a touch to allow the Z battery to fit in. That would be amazing. MBW said, what's the best 3 lenses you can get for the A7 III if you could only get 3 for cinematic? Well, I can tell you what I use, and it's what I use for everything. I use the Sony 35 1.4. That's to give me a nice sort of wideish look. If I do need to go wider than that, I can use my 16 to 35, but I generally shoot with the 35 1.4. Then I'll use the 50 if I want to get a medium type shot. And then I'm going to the 85 to get a beautiful portrait type look. They're the 3 lenses that I would use for cinematic type work. Now, the thing you could do as well now, and that's what I'm thinking about getting when it becomes in stock, is to get the Tamron 28 to 75. So if you could get that, that covers that whole 28 to 75. You could then get a nice wide, say something in the 12mm prime area, and still go for something like a 135 at the long end. That would also be amazing as well. It really just depends on what you want to carry around. I think the Tamron 28 to 75 is the perfect video camera for me if I want to use gimbals and things like that. So that's probably the #1 lens now I would buy if I was just dealing with video. It's not in the shop, so I'll probably get it once it becomes available readily. I'm not in a hurry at the moment. But they'd probably be the ones. But for me personally at the moment, I'm just using a Sony 35 1.8, the 55, which is outstanding in video focus, and the 85. Gerald said, I do think Nikon will come out with a large enough lens mount to accommodate both the full frame and medium format image sensor. I think that's possibly what they're going to be doing as well, Gerald. That would be a bold move on to ensure Nikon's future, and I think that might be as well. Too Smart said a6700 plus a Sigma 18 to 35. Yeah, that's a great lens. I know a lot of GH5 users love that lens as well. That would be fantastic if they brought that out for Sony particularly. But again, there must be a reason why they're not. But it is a great video lens, that one. Jason has also said, wanting to get some more lighting into my kit. What do you think about LEDs for stills? I have the Godox 8200 and 2 speed lights. Wanting some roto lights or an a6700, what would you do? Well, if you're dealing with stills, I prefer the ice lights. Now, Godox have made some as well, haven't they? That are light sticks. I haven't reviewed them yet. I only use ice lights, but they're expensive. I do have roto lights. I've got 3 of them. They're the version 1 though, not the version 2. If you're going to get, I probably would get the Godox and try them. First, the sticks that come out. Someone may be able to say what the name is. I'll just see if I can Google it, just to check and just see. I'm not sure what they're called, though. I'll just see if I can bring... Oh, yeah, there we go. I'm just waiting for it to load. You can actually get these. These Godox, they're, what are they? Now this is Australian pricing though. They're Godox LC500, and your US pricing will be cheaper than this. This is obviously Australian pricing. LED light stick, and I believe they're dual color, so they'll go from incandescent to obviously daylight as well. The only thing that worries me about this is that, remember, the second that you give lighting that is incandescent as well as daylight, you lose half the power. So if you just wanted this to be used as incandescent, you lose half the power because the daylight lights aren't working. If you want them to work in just daylight, none of the incandescent lights are working. If you want this on full power, you have to use them with both on, and it will probably be something like a 3600 color balance. So that's the issue for me on that. The way I use my ice lights is I use the ice lights which are totally daylight balanced, and then I'll put some clear, well, it's not clear, I just put yellow foil over the top of them to get a incandescent light look. So that's the problem. It's because they're dual temperature controls, but way cheaper, probably half the price of what you'll pay for an ice light. So these could be an option for you if you want to get lighting. Now, I would go this way more than buying the Neo Roto lights. Remember, the thing too, that the Neo Roto lights are round. They're very concentrated, just like this, whereas these are a lot longer, so you'll get a much softer look, which really lights you up beautifully. And I use ice lights all the time. I'll swear by them, but they're much more expensive. So I'm not certain how these will compare. We'd have to get a review done to see, but that's what I'd buy. If you already have the Godox AD200, you still should be getting an AD600 or the AD400, because you're going to have to eventually overpower sunlight, and you won't do that with the AD200. So you'll need to eventually get something like the AD600 or the AD400. But I use LEDs all the time, and they're ice lights. Hope you like pictures. Just saying hi. Matt Mitchell's just saying the Carter bag has been replaced and taken over by Manfrotto. Oh, thank you for that, Matt. That's really good. So that bag now obviously is produced by Manfrotto. I love that bag to death. It's so good. Vegan said, well, I hear the Tamron is so sharp. Look, that Tamron, when I used it, everyone thought I was lying, and I got that many people saying to me, the lens is no good, you're lying, you've been bought out by Tamron, and all this sort of stuff. If you go back to where I've reviewed that, you'll see that in a lot of the comments. And I was saying, why would I lie about it? They're not paying me to do it. And I obviously had a good lens that didn't have those issues that now the firmware is fixed. And mine worked fantastic. And it was incredibly sharp. It focused as good as using a native lens. And I asked them if I could buy it, but they wouldn't let me, unfortunately. And now everyone's now saying the same thing. So I've been proven right, what I was saying all along, when all these people were saying you're lying, you've been bought out by Tamron and all this other thing that people were saying. It was so funny. But that lens is super sharp. I was so happy with it, and I will buy that lens eventually. Says Roger said Tamron is a legal development partner with Sony. Okay, there you go. That's why. Thank you, Roger. That answers why Tamron probably will bring out a 70-200 because of that reason. G'day, Photomaic. How are you, mate? Good to see you on here. Gerald said Gerald's pre-ordered the Godox Flashpoint version of the ice lights, 189 Adorama. That's great. Way cheaper than the ice lights, and I would love to try and get my hands on one to compare them and see how they work side by side. The issue that I don't like looking at them is you can see the LED on these lights. Now that to me bothers me a little bit. See how you can see the LEDs? Well, that to me says that it's not going to be as diffused as what the ice light is, because the ice light is very diffused light. I'll just grab one for you. Now, what I was saying was, if you look at these, so these are the ice lights. See how when you're looking at this, you can't see any LEDs in there at all. Now, it's really frosted glass, really frosted glass. And the thing with this is that, I mean, it's going to blast this out because this is set for in this room, but these are very, very soft. It's very soft lighting. I'll just bring it down a little bit. It's incredibly soft lighting, and I love how long these are. Like if you compare this to, say, something like the Roto Neo lights, like the problem with this is, look at the difference in coverage, say for this as compared to an ice light, or that light you're looking at there, which was the Godox light. These have to be softer because they'll go longer. It goes longer over the face than what this is. This is going to give you a much harder type look than what you'll get, say, from this type of thing. And the beauty is that I can just screw, and I think you can do that probably on that light as well, but on the Godox one, but you can screw two together and then you can cover whole bodies on this. You know, and basically it'll cover a whole body. So I could stand up there like that and it'll cover a whole body. So therefore you can light up a whole body. Now I've got 3 of these that I use. I'll just see if I can screw it together. And I love it because basically I can light up, when I'm using modeling shoots, I'll put them together like this. Let me just turn 2 on. All right, so I can stand at the back of the thing like this, and I can have it so it'll light up the whole body, and that's from head to basically the feet. I can then bring in a third light, and then I can have one coming back to give separation from the hair. And that's the way that I'll tend to use these ice lights. And that works so well. And you can obviously do that with the Godox too. But I do, when I'm looking at them, I am seeing a difference in the fact that the Godox has the light showing. So I'm not certain that it's diffused as well as the ice lights, and I'd have to test that to see. And that's the problem too with this, because the Neo Roto light, see, if you're looking at it here, is that you've got the LEDs straight here. So this isn't diffused at all. Now, you can get diffusers and stuff that sit on there, yes. But in its natural form, it's still got the LEDs that show, and it's a harder type light. That's just why I love the ice lights so much. But that's me personally. If I was buying something new again now, I obviously would have a look at those Godox, because, excuse me, if you're dealing with something, you know, that's $189, it's much, you know, much cheaper than say getting a ice light. You could buy 4 of them or 5 of them for the same price you could get the ice lights in. But anyway, it's interesting. I'd love to see a review and just to see how they actually work. So I hope that was useful for you guys to see that. Oh, it's jumped again. I hate that. Where was it up to? Not sure. I'll just have to keep going from down here. Kavina just said, thanks for the discussion. Jim said, up button, please. Yes, thanks. I'd love it if you could say like, if you could give an up, hit that like button, guys. It does mean a lot to me. Funamik said, oh, he's just talking to someone. New MBW said 35, 50 and 85, great. I was thinking of the 28 to 75, something wider, maybe the Sony 85 1.8. So said, I believe the Sony a7S III and the a6700 are ready to go. I'm sure they are. I'm sure that those two cameras are ready to go now, and Sony's holding back. They will want to see what the release from Nikon and Canon is. That's for sure. And like I said there, I bet you any money they can add extra features through firmware, and I can guarantee that they could do that if they wanted to. And that's probably what they're thinking about doing. Photomix said, advanced bloggers like myself want to flip around screen. Great AF, 4K, and good battery and mic jack. I agree with you. I'd love one of those too, Photomix, and I love the GH5 for that. The problem was, though, that it just didn't have good autofocus, and that's why I sold that camera. Mark said, really interesting, really asking which lenses to get is more about what you shoot. Yeah, and it's true, Mark. It does depend what you're shooting as well. Photomix said, how hard is it to make that camera? Panasonic comes with the closest, but the AF is too tough. Yeah, and that was the problem. I loved the GH5, but the focus just didn't cut it. And that's the problem. It was an issue with the focus on that camera. I just couldn't rely on it. If the GH5 had Sony's focus, it would be unbelievable, because the stabilization was just outstanding. The color looked amazing out of that camera, but the focus let it down terribly. It had the fully articulating screen, which was also fantastic as well. It's just a pity that they, had such terrible autofocus. MBW said 16 to 35 vice maybe for the wide angle zoom. I just wish there was another option with a lower aperture. Tamron savers. It'll happen. We just have to wait. Dave said Godox stickers on back order. Interesting. Photomix said I was at a wedding and the videographer had the Yanogo ice light. That thing was pretty bright. Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. But they do look light, but the ice light's really light. I think full power on that is having all the lights on, but then the color balance is not daylight anymore. That's the problem. And I know I've got version 1 ice lights. Version 2 is considerably brighter than what the version I've got is. Carl said, did you see Jared Poland's review on the Fujifilm X-H1? No, I haven't seen it, Carl. I don't really watch much of Jared's stuff at all. I find him a bit over the top. So I don't really watch much of his stuff at all. You get what you pay for with Westcott. Yeah, you do, I'm Brown. Tony, I agree with you. Westcott iSlide is $500. Yeah, they're expensive. They are expensive, but it is beautiful soft light. I say to people, the way that I can sort of say this to you is that the iSlide is just like window light. When I use it correctly, it's just like someone is sitting in front of a window. And that to me means a lot. Dave Flint said, I have version 1. I've got the same version 1 as well, Dave. Good to see Tony in here anyway. Hope You Like Pick said, is Tamron 17 to 35 2.8 for Sony? No, it's not released yet. We're hoping it gets released for Sony. It probably will be though, Hope You Like Picks. I'm sure they'll probably do it. David Brown said, oh, he's talking to Tony. What else? Mark said, Photomic, I'm saying it is an option. Obviously, you are a spokesman for all E-mount users. I'm not sure what that means. Too Short said, Too Smart said, how much of your clients' work is in 4K? Very little. I mostly shoot 1080p. And the reason why I'm shooting 1080p is so that I have the ability to shoot it at the 60 frames per second. That's the thing for me. Nearly all the videos that you'll see that I put online have been shot at 1080p 60, so I have the ability to slow it down. Clearly, when the A7S III comes out and I can shoot 4K 60p, I will, because I love that ability to crop. But at the moment, I like to shoot in 60p so that I can slow that down 50% in Final Cut, and I get that beautiful, dreamy bride walking down the aisle or walking through a field or whatever I'm doing. It's gorgeous to shoot at 60p and then slow it down 50%. You can't do that unless you shoot at 1080p on Sony cameras. The only way you could do that is to have the GH5, which gives you 4K 60p, but then I lose the focus, and that's why I sold that camera. Obviously, the new A7S III is going to give us 4K 60p. That's the reason why I'll be buying that. Or if you got a a6700, that also had 4K 60p in it as well, I would be shooting 4K 60p. What else have we got? Jason said, have you tried your ice lights in a softbox? If so, what were the results? No, I never have to, Jason. They're soft enough on their own. I've never had to put them inside a softbox. You would lose too much strength. It's like most LEDs. If you put them inside a softbox, you lose too much power. But I don't have to. It's soft enough on their own. Yeah, you're saying if they're as soft as you say, you might not need one. Yeah, I don't. Remember, too, it's all about control, too. You don't bring them too close and then have them on full power. Turn the power down and balance them with fill and key. You know, if you're starting to get a harsher shadow on one side, fill it in with a bit of fill light, things like that. But they are very soft on their own, as soft as you can get without using a softbox or something like that. I mean, they're never going to be as soft as using a softbox, but they're good enough for me working in a wedding and portrait shoots on their own. Whereas I found with the Neo lights, they're always sort of hard. Look, I'd be happy with the Neos if I hadn't got the ice lights. But now, because I have the ice lights, I don't use the Neos that much. Well, I really never do for portraits. I use the Neos for video lighting. If I'm in a reception or a wedding, I'll have them at both ends, and then I'll be firing them at the bride and groom, doing their speeches and things like that. They're really the only time that I use the Neos now. Sony 55 is the best lens in Sony lineup with reasonable budget too. I love the 55. It's one of my favourite lenses. David said, just picked up the Godox LC500 ice light. I have a planned shoot plan with them next week. Let us know how they go, David. I'm really curious to know. Photomix said, oh, he's just talking, I think he's answering someone else there. Rui said, what is the difference using 100 ISO versus 50 ISO and IQ with the Sony? You just lose a little bit of your dynamic range. So remember, the 50 ISO is not native, 100 is. so there will be a penalty in IQ. Now, how much it is depends. I usually try and stick with the native ISOs, but look, if you're struggling, you can go down to the lower ISOs. It's like using the higher ISOs than what camera, you know, these ridiculous ones that they come up with. You will lose performance. Now, whether you can see that, you probably need to be a pixel peeper, but I very rarely go down below the 100. But I don't think you'd lose much, but you will lose some IQ. I hope you like Pic said 89 watching, only 42 likes. Come on, people. Thanks for that. Jill said, please mention the Facebook group. Yeah, guys, don't forget to join my photography Facebook page. It's Photography Videography School. Let me just bring it up just so that you can see it. It's amazing, and it's all for you guys. Because it basically, I created it so you can all share your Facebook pages, your Instagram feeds, everything. And unlike other groups out there where they control everything, I want you to share everything. We're nearly up to 2,000 members now, guys, which is fantastic. Just check this out. It's here. I put a weekly competition on there, and that's what this was. We had to do face this week. It's Photography Videography School. I'll put the link down below if you can't find it. If you search Photography and Videography School, though, you'll get it up. This week's task is actually to do colourful. I'm actually seeing what people are doing, and you'll see here that if I show you, everyone is submitting their work, and then I'll choose one which will become the weekly banner. So I give weekly tasks in there. I mean, it's just a fantastic group, guys. People are sharing their Instagram feeds. You know, they're sharing everything, and it's great. I encourage you to share your YouTube feeds if you want to. The only thing is it's got to be positive. I'm not putting up with anyone abusing other people or anything like that. You'll just get blocked. You know, and I'll share that I'm going to be on YouTube. It's for videographers as well. Please join us there. It's fantastic. And like I said, we're getting up to nearly 2,000 people now, so it's growing fast. Love to see you there. What else? MBW said, how about how much additional steadiness does the Sony lenses with OSS added give the cameras? It does make a difference. If you use a lens like the 18-105 on the a6500, gives you much better stability for video. And that's one thing. So if you have got a stabilized lens, remember it does work with the axis, the IBIS in the camera. So you will be much better if you're hand holding particularly. And I do that a lot now. So having a stabilized lens does make a big difference for video. Not so much for stills, but video, yes. What else have we got? Langston said, slightly off topic, and we just showed his face a minute ago. In the photography site. Slightly off topic, can anyone recommend a good cart? I'm trying to figure out a solution to carry around a light stand and a sandbag, but everything is so big. Yeah, they may be able to put that in the comments down below, Langston. That's a good, that's a really good question, actually. We're going to finish in a minute too, guys. Everju said, Sigma 35 1-point art autofocus for video, as good as native Sony glass. No, look, it's good in stills. It will not be as good if you're dealing with tracking subjects in video. Nothing will work as good as a Sony lens, or the Tamron, actually. I found the Tamron worked as good as Sony. But at the moment, if you're dealing with video and you want to track subjects in video, you really have to go with Sony Native or the Tamron. They seem to be by far the best if you're dealing with that. If you're dealing with photography, any of them are just basically as good. Even with adapters, seem to be really good now. Jim said, leave the sand behind and shoot at the beach. I love it. Sands are plenty. Vegan said, cool, I'll check it out. I'll check out that Facebook group. Yeah, join us there, mate. Mark said, I bought one of those cheap on eBay. They have pull-along wheel type. If you can, Mark, leave it in the just comments down below, and other people might be able to share it or have a look at it. Vegan says, I'll be among a YouTube, my journey on photography, videography, vlogs, etc., and my camera equipment. This channel inspires me so much. Thank you for all you do. Thank you so much, Vegan. Short photo of me is saying. Gerald said, do you think the a6700 will keep time-lapse? Probably not. That's one of the advantages of having this one, because it still has the apps available. I'm glad I bought it, especially after taking that trip. Jason said, Langston Ball, I was actually looking at carts today on Amazon. The cart will cost you 100 AU, by the way. Okay. The thing too with, I don't think you're going to have any of the Play Memories apps now on any of the new Sony cameras. So I think the a6700 won't have the Play Memories apps anymore. Sony really need to address the lack of a time-lapse app, though. That has to be added into their cameras. They really should do that even with firmware, perhaps, but they really should give the ability to do that particularly. I really do like having time-lapse on all the cameras. It's a pity that they've got rid of that. Too Shorts out. Vegan Chaser said, Photomiac. Yeah, of course, I love a funny guy too. I have some of your vids on my playlist. I always watch Photomiac. Check him out, guys. If you're not subscribed to him, he's around 20,000 now. He's way above me, actually. So check him out. He's some great stuff. He's often shooting with Sony. So if you're not following him, have a look at his videos. He does some really great stuff. And the thing too that I love about Photomiac too is he does support people like me as well. And they'll really appreciate that, because some YouTubers just won't give you the support back, particularly with following you and things like that. And he's fantastic. So please, if you're not subscribed to him, pop over and have a look and check out his videos. And I mean that. He's a great bloke. And I don't say that about everyone. Too Smart said, imagine the Optus 85 on a Nikon medium format mirrorless. It would cover the sensor. Yeah, it would actually. Missed my question up top. What was it? Just rewrite it down quickly, new MBW, if you can. Gerald said, so I'll keep my a6500 for the apps as well. That's the reason why I've kept my a72 R2, because I've got the apps on there. I've got the time-lapse, all the Play Memories apps are all on there. That's the reason I've kept it. And it's probably the reason why I'll keep the a6300 and the a6500 as well. Vegan Chasers said that's about it. So that might be all, guys, for now. Like I said, I've got that shoot tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. I'm also going to have my review of the RX 100 Mark V up. Let you know how I went on my trip with that. So that will stay up as well in the coming days. And now, because I'm back again, I will start posting again. Like I said, I've been away for the 6 days, so I haven't been able to post much over the last few days. Yeah, no worries, Photomic. I mean it. Check all the videos that are coming out. Like I said, remember to check out Photomiac there. He's got a great site as well. And Jim said he's also started his YouTube journey. The stacks of everyone coming on board. Anyway, guys, stay tuned. Have a great weekend. And I'll see you all again soon for the next video. So, bye for now, guys. Have a great weekend, everyone.